Hello, everybody. It says we are live. So let me just check a couple of things here real quick, and then we will get going. Hello, everybody. It says we are live. All right. Audio sounds good. So we have connection. We've got good audio. We don't have an echo, so that's always a good thing. So, and it looks like we have some of you on. So, all right, let's jump into this. Kind of excited about this tonight. We're going to talk about the 2022, the upcoming elk season. We're going to kind of do a forecast. And this kind of stemmed from a couple of questions from you guys. So, yes, and if you're wondering what this thing is, that is my microphone. I actually decided to move it a little bit closer to me so that it could catch audio a little bit, kind of get that good, rich audio for you guys, and see what happens here. So, all right. So, yeah, like I said, a couple of questions from you guys, and I will go into the first one. So, all right, so this comes from Jason, and he basically says, I know Labor Day weekend will be. Oh, let me back up a little bit. So he says he was wondering what my experience with crowds the various weeks of September was. And he says, let's assume the season opens on September 1st. This year, there is a full moon on September 10th and the equinox on the 22nd. His two choices are to hunt 5 days starting on Tuesday, September 6th or Monday, September 19th. He says, I know Labor Day weekend will be a zoo, comparing weekday hunting September 6th through the 9th compared to 20th through the 24th. Would you expect fewer hunters on one of those weeks? My guess would be that coming off the holiday, coupled with full moon and early, would be less hunters, but I'm not sure if that's generally true. And then also for a guy hunting in any elk unit and happy with the legal animal, which week would you pick? He's thinking earlier as the herds might not be fully formed and it might be easier to lure a legal animal in than during the equinox when the bulls and cows might be less curious and willing to leave the herd. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about, within this. And so we will just kind of jump in. I told Jason that I was actually going to jump on this and cover this tonight because I thought it was a great topic. And it kind of couples with a couple of other things that have come in from you guys. So, all right, let me check. Good. Okay, here we go. So, all right. Labor Day, early in the year. So let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and change screens here. So merge. So hopefully you guys can see this is moongiant.com. Those of you that have followed me for a little while, you know that this is a site that I use quite a bit to see what the moon cycle is going to be doing during the month of September. So, as you can see, there's a full moon right here on the 10th, like he talked about. And so Labor Day is September 5th. So, here in Idaho, our season runs August 30th to September 30th. So, really that first weekend is going to be Labor Day weekend. Now, here's a few things to remember about that week. Now, Jason, I know you were asking about hunting, the 6th through the 9th. So, Labor Day weekend, I'm just going to start with that first weekend and I'm just going to move right through the month. We're going to talk about the moon phase during that, and then I'm going to kind of talk about which weeks I'm targeting on or how I'm going to hunt this season. So, all right, so first weekend is going to be Labor Day weekend, and you're right. There is a lot of people out there because it's kind of the last hoorah. It's the last camping weekend, of the summer, so there is a lot of people out there. We don't shy away from hunting Labor Day weekend. We just change where we go. So, some of the areas that are closer to trails where there is going to be activity of people riding side by sides or riding four wheelers or that stuff, we kind of stay away from. We hit deeper canyons, we hit deeper areas that's a little bit harder to where we're not going to be affected by that Labor Day weekend traffic. Now, the other thing, there's going to be two other things going on that weekend. You're going to have a bright moon. So if there's no weather, bright nights, the elk are going to be very active at night. The other thing that you have the first part of that season is heat. So your elk activity is going to be very early in the morning and very late in the day. Now, you can also get some good midday activity because of the brighter moon when they're pretty active at night. Now, early on, right there, you still have bulls that are in that mindset of gathering cows. And so it really, you really need to kind of put what your goal is, what you want to achieve. What are you looking to get? Now, you mentioned you're hunting an any elk area. So for us with archery, we can take a bull or a cow. Now, the other thing that we do that first weekend because of the heat is we find those really dark, cool draws because that's where the elk are going to be hanging out during the day. And that's where if you get into those cool, dark draws, even though it's a bright moon and they have all that activity, you can get some good midday activity because temps are a lot of times 10, 15 degrees cooler in those dark draws than they are in other areas. So our focus that first weekend is areas that get us away from people in cool, dark draws. That's where we focus the first weekend, especially if it's Labor Day weekend. Now, you talked about, hunting that following week after Labor Day. You're going to have a few challenges. You're still going to have high heat and you're going to have a lot of bright activity or bright nights because of, the moon's getting bigger and bigger up to that full moon on the 10th. But you also have bulls in the mindset that are still looking to gather cows. You also have, less dominant bulls, younger age class bulls that have gotten kicked out from the bachelor group. They're solo. They're just looking for friends. So those types of bulls are really responsive to cow only sounds because they're looking for that friendship. They're looking for that companion. They had spent all summer either in a herd or in a bachelor group or the herd with the cows and the calves or in a bachelor group with other bulls. And as those bulls got hard horned and started establishing their pecking order, those younger age class bulls get kicked out on their own. They get ran off. So they are looking for friends. They're looking for safety in numbers. And so calling in those younger age class bulls can be really, really effective that first time or that first portion of the season. The only thing that I'm going to caution you on about hunting that first week is you have two strikes. You have that full bright night with the moon, and then you have higher temps, which those two combined can lead to less elk activity. Now on the flip side, you could have some cows come in early, so you could have an early rut cycle during that first time frame. So me personally, I don't ever take a full week that early in the season. So usually for me, it's you're kind of information gathering that first weekend too. What's the feed like? Where are the elk congregating at? Are they in their normal areas? Have they moved into different areas? So that's why that first weekend we're kind of doing that information gathering. So now we have put bulls on the ground opening day. We have put bulls on the ground that Labor Day weekend. I think 2019 season, I think we put 2 bulls on the ground Labor Day weekend. So it can be effective, but for me personally, I'm gonna go later in the month, and we're gonna get into that. And we're gonna kind of talk about that. So we're gonna kind of go week to week here. So Mr. Delt Outdoors, if I draw the New Mexico hunt, it looks like I'm going to be in full moon the whole hunt for me. So Delt, sounds like you've kind of got an early season tag there then. So All right. Moving into the second weekend. For us, that's going to be the 9th, 10th, and 11th. We'll head up Friday, do an evening hunt on Friday, hunt all day Saturday, and then hunt part of the day Sunday before we have to come back. Temps are starting to come down a little bit, and now we actually have that full moon. But it's kind of hard to predict right now what the weather is going to do. Even though we're looking at bright moons and full moons, there is a chance we could get weather in with cloud cover that's going to make that bright moon a non factor. Usually, historically, what I found that 9th, 10th, and 11th is elk activity or bugling activity typically usually isn't as strong, just because the bulls have already gathered up their cows. That older cows that came into estrus early on in the month have already been bred, and so now you're kind of in this holding pattern where bulls are waiting for cows to come into estrus. So the 9th, 10th, and 11th, you may not have a ton of vocal activity because there's not really cows coming into estrus and everybody's just kind of waiting for it. But you can go in and you can do the breeding sequence and create that excitement. It takes a lot more patience. That 9th, 10th, and 11th, it's going to take a lot more patience. And the thing I'm going to tell you right there is that's going to be a weekend where you are going to want to work areas versus working elk. And for those of you that have been a herd member for a little bit, you've heard me talk about work areas in the past. And what I mean by that, for some of you new members, is when you work an area, you actually do quite a bit of blind calling setups. You get into areas where you have fresh elk sign, fresh pea, fresh tracks. You can smell them a little bit. You can tell how strong it is, based on how long ago they were through there. And then you basically set up and you work areas. You're going to stay in these areas and you're going to work these blind calling setups for 45 minutes to an hour. It's a it's a game of patience at this point. You may not get a lot of bugling activity and bugle type responses, but you will get a lot of curiosity responses of them coming in silent. We probably take more silent bulls that weekend than we do any other time throughout the month, just because, like I said, it is kind of that lull. You are doing this breeding sequence, and it kind of creates that curiosity to where they're wanting to go, oh, okay, hey, I want to go over and check this out and kind of see what's going on here. Okay. Again, moving into that next week, the 12th through the 16th, the moon is starting to diminish, but it's still big. It's still bright. Once you kind of start, even when you go roll into that next weekend, the 16th, 17th, and 18th, you still have half a moon, which still creates pretty bright nights. The nice thing is you still have the chance that storms could come in and clouds could come in. And it doesn't necessarily have to be storms that bring rain, but I mean cloud cover that can shield that bright. Now, that 16th, 17th, 18th time frame, that's usually when we start our long hunt. In fact, this year we will head to camp on the 16th and we will be up there until the 25th, 26th. That's going to be our long stretch. So we've used the 2 weekends previous to, figure out, where the elk are hanging out, what type of spots are they in? Are they in their normal patterns? Did, pressure during the summer of people camping and riding around, did it knock them out of their habits? Did it change their routine? Did it push them lower on the mountain? And also, I'm going to hold on that. So there's another question comment that I'm going to come back to. So, Jason, the other thing that you talked about was, your hunt starting on September 19th. So, one of the things you asked, when would I expect fewer hunters? Honestly, I mean, public land hunting for elk has gotten so popular that it really doesn't matter. We see people all throughout. We do see more people towards the last half of the season. But generally, I mean, dealing with people, especially if you're hunting public land, you're going to deal with people no matter when you're out there. It's pick those areas, really study the map and find areas to where you can get away from people. And sometimes that's really tough because you're looking at the map and you're not sure what the pressure is going to be like during September. And unfortunately, some of that information you're not even going to be able to gather until you're out there during September. Now, if it's a place that you are hunting year after year after year, you kind of learn those areas. You learn where people like to go and you learn where people don't like to go. And then you adjust where you want to go to get away from people based on those areas where people don't like to go. So now for us, and I wish I could, unfortunately, the way this screen share works, I can't scroll all the way down, but you can see 16th, 17th is the last, 18th, it all starts getting smaller and smaller. So you start rolling, the 22nd, you get into that autumn equinox time, 23rd, 24th, 25th, and that moon's getting smaller, which means night's getting darker. The other thing that nice too is you're getting into that peak rut time, and so you have a couple of advantages here where you have darker nights and more rut activity. And because of the darker nights means you're going to have more daytime activity because of the rutting. This is the time of year, especially with the dark night, where you could get on a bull at first light and you're working to him until 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, just because there is hot cows in the area. The bulls are constantly going, and they don't bed down as early because they're constantly checking cows, because cows are coming into estrus quite often at this point. And so those bulls are really, really active checking those cows. Now, following, from about the 24th on, you've pretty much got a dark moon or a dark night, through the rest of the month. So you've got some really, really good choices there. So me personally and my crew, we're going up Friday the 16th, and we're hunting that whole entire following week until the 25th, 26th. So, for us, based on what we're seeing, that's what we really like. Now, the thing is we also know that there's a lot of people that are going to have that same thought. They're looking at the same thing. But it's kind of tricky too, because there's a lot of people, and a majority of the people don't even look at that stuff. Majority of the people aren't checking moon phases. They aren't planning their hunt based on that information. So they're just going whenever they can. I know we bumped into a group last year that, they took 2 weeks off, but they split it where they were up there for a week, went home for a week, and then came back up for a week. Other people I've bumped into in the past, 2 weeks straight. So, and you will have people that like early in the month, later in the month. My preference, I like later in the month because I like the peak rut. Now, you had mentioned about, maybe earlier in the year, because, the bulls and cows might be less curious. Actually, the opposite's going to be true, Jason, because, with the rut going on, and with cows coming in estrus, a bull knows, all the bulls in that area know that this is the time to breed. And so this is where the breeding sequence is really effective, because, you can go into an area one day and there's just bugling nonstop. There's just tons of activity, and you immediately know that there's a hot cow in that area. Next day you go back in there and it's quiet. Okay? The cows that were in estrus the day before are no longer in estrus. Well, guess what? Now you can come in there and you can be a herd. You can be a bull with a cow that is in estrus. And so now all that excitement that herd created over there, with all the satellite bulls and all the other bulls close by that were paying attention to that herd, now they're going to pay attention to you. So you can actually create more curiosity by taking that approach. So to answer your question, Which week do I recommend? I recommend you kind of starting Monday, September 16th, or sorry, Monday, September 19th. Excuse me, guys, and hunting that week. So I apologize. I've still got a rasp on my throat just from second round of COVID. So that's why 2 weeks ago, that's why I did not go live, because I was in my second bout with it. Definitely a lot better this time around. So, okay, so Jason, hopefully that answered your question. So now we're going to move into the second part of this, and this one comes from Michael. And he said, I would be interested to hear your thoughts on how adaptations for overall weather conditions can be planned, if at all. Last year was a drought, and the elk locations were much different than years prior that provided more water and feed availability. How early can we make accommodations on our hunt plans to adapt for those changing conditions, and what sort of tweaks should be made? Now, I've talked about this before, and this is where keeping tabs on the weather and keeping tabs what type of weather pattern we're in. So, is it an El Nino or a La Nina? So El Nino is usually a wetter year, where La Nina is a drier year. And actually, we have been in the same pattern the last 2 years. And usually when you get a 2-year consecutive pattern like that, the second year is actually drier than the first year. And I've talked about it in the past of dry years versus wet years. So during wet years, you find elk all over the place because feed is all over the place. But in a drier year, that feed is more concentrated, and so you actually find elk in areas that they usually aren't during a wetter year. And you experienced that last year. This year is going to be the same way. In fact, it could be a little bit worse. And so that feed's going to be even more critical, and it's going to be even more isolated. So those elk are actually going to be huddled up even more. Now, the nice thing is, when you get into a dry year where feed is more concentrated instead of spread out all over, you actually end up with a higher bull to cow ratio, which actually does create more competition. So it can be a benefit. Now, how early can we make accommodations on our hunt plans to adapt for those changing conditions? I've already started reading the snowpack reports and what the hydrologists are forecasting for the snowpack, for if they're forecasting a drought or if we're going to be okay. And I recommend that in each of you check the snowpack report for the area that you are going to be hunting. So because every area is a little bit different, even though you're in the same state. So here in Idaho, we have parts in the state that are having a great snow year, that the snow is just piled up and it's above normal. We have other areas that are 65-70% of normal snowpack. Now, the other thing too is this is the time of year where you want to see what's happening. How fast is that snow melting off? Is that snow melting off really quick and the ground's not able to absorb it and it's not getting to the reservoirs? Or is it just melting really quick, the ground's saturated, and it's just basically running downhill and flowing to the ocean? So that makes a play also. So, snowpack, what they're forecasting for level of snowpack, or what they're saying, what percentage of snowpack it is, how fast the snow melts, but then you also want to pay attention to how wet the spring is. There's years that we've had horrible snowpacks, but we've had a really, really wet spring and early summer. So we could have a really wet spring and wet summer that, again, is going to put enough moisture out there that's going to spread that feed out. So right now is the time that you want to really start taking a look at all these and really start planning your hunts. Where am I going to go? Where are the areas where that feed is congregated? Where are those areas that, when I've talked about it before, is during the drought years, Where do the elk go? Are there, because sometimes in a wet year, maybe you've got a few ponds in your area, and we do where we hunt. We've got a couple of ponds, but last year those ponds were pretty much dried up by August. Normal wet years, those ponds will stay with water in them all the way through September, all the way through until the snow starts flying again. So these are all things that you're checking now, and you're constantly evolving your plan throughout the summer. So that way, as soon as the season hits, you know what the snowpack was like, you know what the water forecast was going to be like, you know what the spring weather is like, you know how fast that snow melted off. Those are all indications of what to expect for feed up in your area. And that is one of those things that is really going to benefit you, because then you know what area to focus on in your hunt area. Do you have year-round creeks? Do you have intermittent creeks? What do those creeks do in a dry year? What do they do in a wet year? Again, this is an advantage of hunting an area over and over and over again. Now, if you're going out of state, if you're going to an area you haven't hunted before, this is where getting on the phone to local government agencies, Fish and Wildlife, talk to a conservation officer, talk to them about what's going on in your area. If you're going to do that, before you pick up the phone and call them, get your list of questions written out. Know what specifically you want to ask. Know what information you want to get, because these guys are busy, and gals. They're busy. So by you being prepared, you are going to make the most out of that 10-15 minute phone call. Now, sometimes you might get lucky and you might catch them on a time where they have a lot of time to talk, and they can spend an hour on the phone with you, and they can give you all kinds of information. But you have those resources. You can go online. You can pull up hydrologist reports for that area. Sorry, guys. But you can pull up hydrologist reports for that area. You can call the water board in that area. There's a lot of agencies that you can reach out to and get information. And while you're getting that information, jot all that down, and then look at the maps. Start looking on Google Earth. Start looking on OnX. Start looking at FatMap. Use a few different resources to figure out, what's the water like in your area, and then start, planning your hunt now. Now, what sort of tweaks, should you make, Michael? That's really going to depend on what the weather is doing from now up to hunt season. But this is the time you start formulating your plan. You start gathering all that information right now, and you adjust that plan as the conditions change, because I can guarantee there's going to be a lot of changes between now and when season starts. And with you having contingency and backup plans and having a good game plan, that's just going to maximize your time when you actually get to camp and you start hunting. So, because if you get into an area, okay, the feed's gone here. Oh man, that stream that's normally here is dry this year. So, and while you're in there, take a look at the tracks, take a look at the sign. See what animals are still hanging out there. If you've been in there, and usually there's a lot of sign, but now you get in there and that creek is dry, and you're only seeing random onesie twosies on the elk tracks. That herd is someplace else. All right, saw a couple of comments pop in. Delt, I put in for both late and early hunt, but had a better chance with the early hunt to draw out on. Gotcha. I do have a late season rifle tag in later October in Idaho, where we talked about during the Utah Sportsman's Expo. So this is Joel. Hey, Joel, how you doing, bud? So, hey, thanks for stopping by and, talking to me over there. So that was kind of a crazy show this year. So Hey, this is Jason. Bob is my YouTube alias. Thanks for the info. Makes sense. Perfect. So, Jason, yeah, hopefully that answered your question on dialing in that. So, but yeah, as I was saying, right now is the time you want to start formulating everything, and that's one of the things that we're going to do this year is we actually have a couple of areas that we've got keyed on the map that we haven't been into yet, but this year we're going to. We're kind of curious to see, what's in there. But that's one of the things that we're also going to, keep mental notes of when we go in there. Of what the activity is like and what the sign we're seeing, because this probably is going to be a little drier year, so we know that's definitely going to affect that area. So okay, so we covered the weeks, we covered the moon phases, we covered when to start putting the plan together, how to adjust and adapt that plan and adjust it as we go. But it's an ever evolving plan, and the biggest thing I can tell you guys is don't just have one plan, don't just have one keyhole. You're really limiting yourself if you do that. You want to have as many options as possible, because one, it is public land. You never know how many other people are going to show up there. Weather's a factor. How is that going to affect those areas? And so if you have backup plans for each possible scenario, public pressure, fire, drought. I know last year some of the areas in Oregon, they were locking people out of the forest. So if you spent all this time and putting all your eggs in that one basket, and then here it comes season time and you're locked out of that area, and now you're scrambling trying to figure out where you're going to go and what you're going to do, you're too late. So you're wasting so much time and you're really selling yourself short. I mean, as much prep work as you can do now to formulate those plans and have everything put in place, the better your season's going to go. And if you have the ability, if you live close enough as the summer goes along, get up there and scout. See what the animals are doing. Where are they hanging out? That's all information too that's going to kind of be beneficial, of what's going to happen, because, normal years, where those bulls are hanging out during the summer and where they are during September could be several miles apart. So, but when you get into a drought year and that feed is a lot more congregated, they don't move as much. So, so those are things to kind of keep in mind while you're out there scouting as well. So, all right. So, okay. Questions, comments, concerns, options. So, okay, nothing on there. So yeah, if you got some questions, throw them in. So for those of you that may not have seen it, I didn't actually share it in here. I need to grab the YouTube video and throw it in here. When I was over at Hunt Expo, I met up with a company called Hardside Hydration. Great group of guys, and absolutely love the product they just came out with. Excited to use it this year. What they did is, we always have that battle of water bottle versus water bladder, and I like the bladder because when the hose is right there that I can just easily drink, I drink a lot more water during the day, which helps my energy level and everything else. But I hate bladders. I mean, I've had so many of them leak. I've had so many of them mold because they're a pain in the butt to clean. And what these guys did is they created a cap that fits a wide mouth bottle that then goes to a hose. So you have the ability to have that access to water right there where you're hiking. You don't have to take your pack off, or you don't have to reach around and get in an odd position to try to pull the water bottle out to drink. It's just right there. Plus, it's easier to check where your water level is at in that bottle. So, but I am going to grab that YouTube video and I will put it in here as soon as we're done. Because down underneath the video, there's actually some links that you guys can click on to go to the different companies, and it'll take you right there to the products that we're talking about. And yes, those are affiliate marketing links, which basically means if you click on those links and you decide to make a purchase, I do earn a small commission. That commission just helps with, funding the channel and funding everything that we do here. So, all right. I don't see any questions. Let me check on the phone real quick. So I think we are going to wrap up for tonight. Yep, we're good. So we must have gotten all the questions answered. Let me check one more place. We are good. So, all right, guys. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of things to start thinking about. Start formulating that plan now. If you want to, the website again with the moon is moongiant.com. The cool thing about Moon Giant too is even though the full moon, you can actually click on that date. And it will basically tell you what time that moon is going to rise and what time it's going to set. So you know exactly, because it could be, even though you have a full moon, that full moon may be coming up at 11 o'clock during the day, and it's going down at 11:30 at night. So it's really not a factor. Or maybe it's not even coming up until 3 o'clock in the morning. So there's really only 3 hours a full moon. So moongiant.com, you can go to September, and then like I said, you can click on the moon of that day, or you can click on that day and it'll give you all the information about moon rise, moon set, and really how much of a factor that is going to be. So Delt, that was one that I wanted to check out, but have yet to do that. So, Mr. Jason thinks I appreciate it. You bet. So, all right, let me check. Okay, thank you. Have a great night. And let me check one more thing real quick. And yep, we're good. So, all right, guys, we're going to sign off for tonight. So thanks for everybody for tuning in. Thanks for the questions. As always, keep calling, keep practicing. More importantly, though, have fun. And we will see you guys in 2 weeks on the next Wapiti Live Q&A. And I might have another guest. So never know. All right, guys.